At 1:17 a.m., or 3 at Riverside Memorial felt too small for the number of hearts pounding inside it. The overhead lights burned white and hot, reflected in stainless steel and pooled blood. A monitor shrieked at the head of the bed, its alarm cutting through the hiss of oxygen and the wet roar of the suction. Numbers on the screen tumbled in red. 70, 62, 48. Open wider. I need more exposure. Dr. Victor Hale's snapped, gloved hands buried in the patient's abdomen. The body on the table had been a man in his late 60s when he rolled through the doors. Now he was a pale chest under a drape, a tube between his teeth, a gash in his abdomen that refused to stop bleeding. The edges of the incision shone slick and dark. With every beat of his failing heart, blood surged up like it was trying to escape the body. A clamp slipped from a junior resident's fingers and rang against the tile floor. She flinched. Sweat traced a line from her temple down into her mask. "Pick it up. Eyes up, Emily." Hale's voice was sharp, too sharp. It bounced off glass and metal and skittered under skin. At the far side of the room beside the instrument table, Lena Cross moved with a different rhythm. Quiet, precise. She did not look at the chaos, not directly. She watched it through reflections on the polished trays, through the shadow of Hale's shoulders, through the rise and fall of numbers on the monitor. Her hand sorted instruments that were already in perfect order. Pian Kelly Metzenbaum needle driver. She touched each piece only long enough to confirm its place, then let it rest again in its metal groove. The muscle memory did not belong to OR3. It belonged to darker rooms and hotter air. "Pressure is 42 and dropping, guy," the anesthesiologist called. His voice cracked on the last word. "He is not tolerating this." Hale squinted into the cavity. The field was not a field anymore. It was a lake. Blood pooled in the retroperitoneal space, hiding everything he needed to see. He tried to sweep gently with a sponge stick, searching for a fountain of red that would give away the arterial source. More blood welled up to take its place. "More suction," he said louder. "I need to see. Clear the field." Naomi Park, the scrub nurse on the opposite side of the table, adjusted the suction tip with trembling fingers. The tubing rattled. It drew away enough blood to reveal slick loops of bowel and torn tissue, then immediately filled again as if the body refused to be read. On the monitor, the line dipped and stuttered. The alarm changed tone. Farther away in some other hallway, a different alarm joined in high and thin. It barely registered in the room. "Hale, his pressure is 35, the anesthesiologist said. "We are running out of time and out of blood." Hale's eyes darted from the wound to the monitor and back again. A sheen of sweat gathered at the edge of his cap. It clung to his lashes. "I know that," he snapped, but his hands slowed. Lena saw the moment it happened. It was small. Hale's shoulders hitched, then dropped. The set of his jaw loosened. His fingers, which had been decisive and quick, hovered without purpose above the wound. He tried to sweep again, more desperately this time. The motion dug into the clotted mass and tore it away. A fresh burst of red spilled up and over his gloves, over his wrist, onto the drapes. It spattered the front of his gown in a pattern that would never come out even with hospital-grade bleach. The room flinched with it. "Damn it," Hale hissed. "I cannot see the source. Where is it coming from?" Naomi's gaze flicked to Lena just for a second. It was almost accidental, as if her eyes had gone looking for the one person in the room who was not making noise. Lena did not move. Her dark hair was tucked under a disposable cap. Her mask hid her mouth. Only her eyes were visible, steady and unblinking. They tracked the blood flow, the angle of the original stab wound, the slight left tilt of the patient's diaphragm on the fluoroscopy image pinned to the light box behind Hale. 32. The number blinked on the monitor. The flat beeping stretched into one long, unforgiving tone before the machine corrected itself. "Victor," the anesthesiologist said quietly this time, "you are losing him." Hale's hands froze. For one stretched-out moment, the sounds of the room separated. The suction gurgled, the monitor screamed, the ventilator sighed. Someone's breath hitched brokenly inside their mask. Halsey looked up from the wound. His eyes were glassy behind his shield. "I have lost the field," he said. The words were soft, almost conversational. They landed in the room like a dropped tray. Nobody moved. Not Naomi, not the resident, not the tech holding the retractor whose forearms were starting to shake with effort. The confession sat there heavy and undeniable. It was an admission they were about to watch a man die. Lena felt the temperature of the room shift. She heard the hitch in Naomi's breathing. She saw the way the resident's eyes filled with tears that did not fall, suspended in the space between wanting to act and not knowing how. Her own pulse sped up, but not the way it used to not in that other life. Back then it had meant incoming fire rotor wash, the smell of burned cloth and burned skin. Here it meant antiseptic filtered air, the distant echo of a floor polisher somewhere out in the hallway. She stepped away from the instrument table. The distance between her and the operating table was short. 6 steps. On the 3rd step, someone shifted without meaning to, clearing her path. On the 5th, Naomi's free hand loosened on the suction tubing as if yielding. Up close, the wound looked worse. The cavity pulsed with each sluggish beat of the heart. The blood was darker, now thicker. It no longer sprayed. It seeped from somewhere deep and low, pooling where no one could see. Lena glanced once at the monitor, storing the numbers. 30, heart rate thin and fast, oxygen saturation sliding down. Then she lifted her gaze to Hale. His eyes were wide behind the fog on his shield. The blue of his gloves was almost entirely hidden under red. Nobody had ever heard Lena raise her voice. Nobody knew what her voice sounded like at full volume. They did not find out now. She did not shout. She spoke with the same calm she used when asking a patient if they wanted another blanket. "I'm taking over," she said, "right now." The words did not need to be loud. They were heavy enough on their own. For a heartbeat after Lena spoke, nobody moved. Her words hung in the air of OR3, suspended between the alarm of the monitor and the wet hiss of the suction. Hale stared at her as if he had never seen her before, even though she had stood at that same instrument table on almost every trauma case he had done at night. Then the moment folded in on itself. The sound of the monitor pressed in, the sharp tone fusing with the fluorescent buzz. The blood in the cavity kept rising. The world narrowed to red and white and the thin line between them. 5 hours earlier, the hospital had been almost quiet. Late evening at Riverside Memorial looked different from the day shift. The overhead lights still hummed, but the voices were softer, the footsteps slower. The big lobby fountain had been turned off. The gift shop gate was rolled down. In the main corridor, a custodial cart rolled past with a scent of lemon and wet mop. On the 4th floor near the staff elevator, Lena swiped her badge and stepped through the doors into the night. Her scrubs were the same faded navy she always wore. She carried a small lunch bag in one hand and a folded hoodie over the other arm. Nobody greeted her. The day shift was spilling out in clusters, talking about weekend plans, checking phones, complaining about traffic. They flowed around her like water around a rock. In the nurse's station at post-op, Naomi Park sat on a swivel chair with one leg tucked under her, scrolling with her thumb. Her hair was pulled up into a messy bun that leaned more toward mess than bun. She glanced up at the clock, then at the elevator. "There she is," Naomi said mostly to the charge nurse beside her, "right on the dot, like a ghost punching a time card." The charge nurse, a tired woman named Mariah, followed her gaze. Lena walked past the desk, nodded once in their direction, and signed in on the clipboard with a small, neat signature. Her handwriting looked like print. She did not pause to chat. Naomi watched her for another second. "You ever notice she never comes in late, never asks to switch shifts, never calls in sick?" Naomi said. "I have never even seen her yawn." Mariah shrugged eyes on the computer screen. "Night people are like that," she said. "They either burn out or they stop blinking." Lena moved into the supply room and set her lunch in the small staff fridge. The room smelled like cardboard and saline. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with sterile packs, gauze-tape tubing. A single fluorescent tube overhead flickered once, then steadied. She opened one of the lower cabinets and pulled a tray out, metal cool against her palms. On the lid, someone had written OR3 in faded marker. She set the tray on the counter and cracked the seal. Inside, instruments lay in rows that would look identical to anyone else. To her, the differences were immediate. One of the clamps was a millimeter shorter than the others. One needle driver had an almost imperceptible nick near the hinge. She ran a fingertip along the set, not to search, but to confirm. Kelly straight. Kelly curved. Long Metzenbaum. Short Metz. Needle driver smooth. Needle driver nicked. She pushed the nicked one aside and made a mental note to tag it later. From the doorway, Naomi leaned in and knocked her knuckles lightly against the frame. "Hey, Cross," she said. "You reorganizing the whole war chest again?" Lena glanced up, then back at the tray. "Just checking what we have," she said. Her voice was low, dry from a day of not talking. Naomi stepped inside, looking over her shoulder. "They were already checked," Naomi said. "Or day shift signed off on everything." She pulled a packet of suture from a bin, then another, tossing them into a small basket. Lena slid a small tenaculum from the bottom of the tray, a short, compact thing with a slightly different curve. Hospital standard sets did not always include it. She set it in the corner of the tray where her hand would expect it. "They missed this one," Lena said. "I like to know where things are without looking." Naomi snorted softly. "You always do," she said. "You walk in and somehow you already know where every lost thing in this building is." Lena did not answer. She closed the tray with care, aligning the lid so the latch did not squeal. Later in the cafeteria, the fluorescent light felt harsher. The room was half empty. A few night shift staff sat in scattered chairs, some staring at phones, some with their heads bent over trays. Lena chose a table near the back one with a view of the clock and the exit. She put her lunch on the table, soup in a reusable container, half a turkey sandwich, an apple, nothing special and nothing messy. And she ate slowly, mechanically, eyes drifting up now and then to the television mounted in the corner. The sound was off. On the screen, some anchor-mouthed headlines about distant storms and markets rising and falling. Jason Reed slid his tray onto the table beside hers, without asking, the legs of the chair scraping softly. He wore blue scrubs, a white coat over them, and the kind of tired smile that tried to be charming even when he was exhausted. "Mind if I sit?" he said, already sitting. Lena glanced at the other empty tables. There were plenty of them. She nodded once. He popped the lid off a bowl of mac and cheese and stirred it with his fork. "Big trauma night, they say," he said. "Weather coming in. The freeway gets slick. People forget how to drive." She took a sip of soup. It was lukewarm. The metal spoon clinked against the side of the container. "You on call in OR?" Jason asked. "I am on nights," Lena said, "wherever they need me." He watched her for a second, chewing. "I swear, Crosby," he said, "you talk like an automated message. Wherever we are needed." He did a rough impression of a robotic voice. She allowed the corner of her mouth to move barely. "I like to be clear," she said. Jason leaned back in his chair, stretching his shoulders. "Look, you know you are good, right?" he said. "I mean technically, fast hands, no panic, all that." Lena lifted her eyes from her soup and met his gaze without flinching. He seemed almost surprised she had actually looked at him. "I do my job," she said. "Yeah, that is the thing." He gestured with his fork a small arc that sent a dot of cheese to the tray. "You do your job, perfectly quietly, night after night. But leadership in the OR is a different animal." She did not respond. He kept going as if he had been waiting for a chance to say it. "You want to move up, you got to be louder," he said. "You have to speak up in rounds, take space in the room. Surgeons notice who talks. Chief notices who pushes." Lena let the words settle. They were not new. She heard versions of them on evaluation forms and performance reviews in the gaps between compliments. Jason took her silence for uncertainty. "I'm just saying," he added, voice turning almost kind. "You are too good to spend your whole career fetching clamps for guys like me." Her gaze dropped to her hands. They lay on the table, fingers relaxed. The nails were short and clean. Along the knuckles, small pale lines traced old cuts. A faint ridge near the base of her thumb marked an old fracture that had healed just a bit crooked. "I understand," she said finally. He seemed satisfied, as if he had given her something helpful. "You think about it," he said. "Speak up a little more tomorrow. Start small." He checked his watch, scraped up the last of his food, and stood. "Try not to sneak up on me in the OR, he said with a grin. "You move like a ghost." When he left, the chair rocked once, then stilled. Lena finished her soup in 3 more slow spoonfuls. The apples stayed on the tray. At the nurse's station just before midnight, the overhead light flickered once more. The computer monitors cast a blue wash over everyone's faces. Naomi fiddled with a pen, twirling it between her fingers. "How was the lecture?" Naomi asked, when Lena logged in at the terminal beside her. "What lecture?" Lena said. "The one you just got in the cafeteria," Naomi said. "From Dr. Reed. I saw him sitting with you. That guy loves the sound of his own voice." Lena clicked through the patient list, her eyes scanning vitals, post-up notes, pain scores. "He had advice," she said. "Let me guess," Naomi said. "Be more assertive, talk more, stop being a shadow." Lena allowed herself a small breath that almost qualified as a sigh. "Something like that," she said. Naomi spun the pen again, then set it down. "For what it is worth," she said, "when my family shows up in the middle of the night bleeding all over the floor, I do not care who talks the most. I care who does not shake." Lena did not answer. Her gaze had moved to the OR schedule on the screen. A transfer was flagged for later in the night. A high-acuity case, likely surgical, or 3, had been reserved. She touched the edge of the desk with the fingertips of one hand, grounding herself in the smooth laminate. Outside, the wind picked up and pressed against the windows. In the distance, a low roll of thunder crawled across the sky. Inside, the hospital settled into its night rhythm. Machines clicked and hummed. Footsteps softened. The building held its breath. Lena checked the time, then turned toward the corridor that led to the operating rooms. Her shift had only just begun. The corridor to the operating room smelled like antiseptic and something metallic that never quite left, no matter how much anyone scrubbed. Lena walked it with the same even pace she always used. Not slow enough to suggest reluctance. Not fast enough to suggest urgency when there was none. Her shoes made almost no sound on the floor. She checked OR3 first. The room was empty, lights off, except for a single low strip near the floor. The stainless steel surfaces reflected thin lines of that light, cool and ghostly. The table stood in the center, bare and waiting. Monitors slept in low-power mode, their screens faintly glowing with screensavers and hospital logos. Lena crossed to the instrument cabinets, opened one, and slid the tray she had prepared onto the counter. She flipped the latches and lifted the lid. Everything was exactly where she had left it. She moved one clamp half an inch to the left. Her hand settled the short tenaculum into the precise corner where her fingers would fall without thinking. She paused a moment, fingertips resting on the cool metal. It was not superstition. It was habit carved into her muscles during hours when daylight had felt like a rumor. Hands learned faster than the mind when lives were measured in breaths. In the corner of the room, the wall clock ticked toward midnight. Her pager vibrated against her hip just as she was about to close the tray. Code Blue, Recovery Room 2. The text glowed on the small screen, calm and white. She shut the tray and moved. The sprint from OR to recovery was not long, but it stretched as her senses sharpened. She heard the difference in the building when a code started. Phones rang one beat faster. Wheels on carts squeaked with more urgency. Voices pitched up and clipped their words. Recovery Room 2 held the echo of a shout when she pushed through the door. A middle-aged man lay on the bed, skin the color of wet paper. His chest jerked in shallow, useless attempts. The monitor at his head screamed a flat line of alarm. A nurse stood at his side with wide eyes, hands hovering in the air as if she had forgotten where to put them. Jason Reed was there already, mask half on, hair slightly askew. He held a stethoscope in one hand and looked like he had not decided what to do with it. "What happened?" Lena asked, already reaching for the bedrail. "Post-op from ortho," the nurse said, words tumbling out. "He complained of chest pain, then he stopped responding. I hit the button, they paged you. I tried to get a blood pressure, it would not read a—" "Step back," Lena said, not unkindly. She lowered the rail and climbed her hands to the center of the man's chest. She felt through the hospital gown for the sternum heel of her hand, sliding to find the right spot. His ribs were thin. It would hurt him later if later came. "Jason, start the code," she yidse. "Ipya mi kada awako," she said, out loud. He blinked as if he needed a cue. Okay, fast," he said. "Code Blue, in progress, chest compression starting, get me epinephrine 1 milligram IV push, page respiratory." The nurse fumbled with a crash cart drawer. Lena locked her elbows and pushed. The first compression always felt wrong. The give of the chest under her palms, the soft pop of cartilage, the faint crunch of ribs that might crack. She wrote it, following the rhythm ticking in her head. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, do not stop. Her arms moved in a straight line. Her shoulders stayed stacked. She watched the man's face for color, the rise of his chest under the nurse's awkward bagging. Jason stared at the monitor. Come on, he muttered. "Give me something." The flat line shuddered, then flickered into a thin, slow rhythm. Not good, but better than none. "Pulse," Lena said. "Check it." Jason pressed his fingers clumsily to the man's neck. He pressed too hard at first, then lightened his touch. "I have it," he said, relief spilling into his voice. "Weak, but it is there." Lena slowed her compressions, then stopped. She did not move her hands away until she was certain the heart was doing its own work again. Her arms burned pleasantly. Sweat pricked at the nape of her neck. She stepped back only far enough to let the respiratory therapist slide in and secure a better airway. Jason let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Nice save," he said. "Good work, team." The nurse who had frozen nodded quickly, her cheeks flushed with adrenaline and embarrassment. Lena stripped off her gloves and dropped them into the biohazard bin. Her hands looked smaller without the latex, just skin and bone and pale scars. She turned toward the door. "Crossed up us," Jason called after her. "That was solid." "Lucky timing," she said. "If they keep fixing," she said. She walked back into the hall, the noise of the unit washing over her, and then receding behind her as the door closed. Her pulse settled again, the thud in her ears fading. In the staff locker room, the air was cooler. The hum of the vents drowned out the worst of the hospital sounds. Rows of metal lockers stood under another fluorescent tube that flickered intermittently, bathing the room in a tired, uneven light. She spun the dial on her locker, opened it, and sat on the bench in front of it for a moment, elbows on her knees. From this angle, the inside of the locker was a collage of necessity. Spare scrubs folded into a tight square, a pair of running shoes with a trace of reddish dust caught in the grooves that no mop could quite scrub away, a small bottle of lotion, a plastic comb, a rolled-up photograph that had been there long enough for the edges to curl. At the very back, behind the folded scrubs, a flash of dull silver caught the light. Her fingers hesitated, then reached in and pulled the chain forward. The dog tag was scuffed and worn, the edges dulled from years of contact with armor fabric skin. The letters stamped into it were still sharp enough. Isov Med, date Nightingale, 3, CPT Elena Cross. She held it in her palm, the metal warming slowly to her skin. The chain pulled between her fingers like a thin river. The locker room door banged once as someone passed through the outer hall. She heard laughter, a snatch of a story about a broken IV pole, the scuff of sneakers. The sounds faded again. She closed her fingers around the tag until the edges pressed into her skin. Her breathing slowed in spite of herself. The hum of air through the vents sounded for a second like a different wind, hot and gritty with sand. She saw a flash of something else behind her eyelids. Not the soft artificial light of Riverside, but a harsh white glare thrown by portable lamps. A tent wall snapping in a dry gust. The dark shape of a helicopter blotting out a strip of stars. Her hand tightened until it hurt. The locker room door creaked open. "Cross you in here," Naomi's voice called. Lena opened her hand. The tag lay silent in her palm. "In here," she answered. Naomi stepped around the row of lockers, ponytail bobbing, a disposable coffee cup in one hand. "There you are," she said. "Charge wants to know if you can float to OR after midnight. They have a transfer coming in, and they are short." Lena slipped the dog tag back behind the scrubs, letting the chain fall into the shadows. She closed the locker door with a soft click. "I can," she said. Naomi took a sip of coffee and made a face. "This stuff tastes like melted plastic," she said. "You want some?" "No, thank you," Lena said. Naomi studied her for a second. "I heard about recovery too," she said. "Jason was talking like he just dragged that guy back from the underworld." Lena sat back on the bench, resting her hands on her thighs. "He started the code," she said. Naomi snorted. "You started the code," she said. "He just remembered how to talk into the air." Lena did not correct her. Naomi shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "You ever get tired of that?" she asked. "Doing the hard part and watching someone else get the pat on the back." Lena looked up at the flickering light above them, then back at Naomi. "Patients are alive," she said. "That is enough." Naomi shook her head, half exasperated, half admiring. "You are impossible," she said. "I'm going to go pretend this coffee helps." When she was gone, the room felt larger again. Lena stood and locked her locker. Her palm still held faint impressions from the dog tag's edges. She rubbed her thumb over the ridge of an old scar on her other hand until the tingling under her skin quieted. Hours later, the apartment felt like a different kind of quiet. It was small, a single bedroom with a narrow hallway and a kitchen that seemed hunched against one wall. No pictures hung on the blank white surfaces. The only light came from a lamp on the table and the faint glow through the blinds from the street outside. She dropped her keys in a dish near the door and kicked off her shoes. The air smelled like dust and old coffee. On the table, a stack of books waited. Notebooks sat beside them, margins crowded with small, neat writing. Titles on the spines whispered their own language. Advanced Vascular Access Damage Control Surgery, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. She sat in the wooden chair, opened one of the books, and picked up a pen. A clean page stared back at her from the notebook. She began to copy a diagram of the abdominal vessel's, hand moving with unhurried precision. Branches labels distances. The angle at which one artery split from another. The approximate location where a blind clamp might catch a bleed without tearing a wall. Outside, somewhere above the cloud cover, a helicopter passed. The sound was faint through the closed window. Just a low, distant thrum that might have been thunder if she had not heard it so many times from much closer. Her hand paused for a second on the page. The pen left a small pool of ink where it rested. She drew in a breath, let it out, and finished the line of the vessel. The conference room on the third floor had too much glass and not enough air. Afternoon light pressed against the tall windows, turning them into pale rectangles that reflected back the faces inside. A long table ran down the center of the room. Coffee cups, legal pads, and hospital-branded pens formed a loose line down its length. Lena sat near the far end where the light did not quite reach. She had a paper cup of water in front of her that she had not touched. Her badge lay flat against her scrub top. The name felt more like an inventory tag than an introduction. At the head of the table, Dr. Sofia Alvarez checked her watch, then tapped a knuckle against the wood. "All right," she said, "let us get started." She was small and composed hair, pinned back so tightly that not a strand had escaped during what had clearly been a long day. Her lab coat was perfectly clean. No stray pen marks, no ghost of iodine. The work she did rarely involved blood. To her right, Victor Hale sat with a folder in front of him, his fingers drumming once, twice, then stilling. Jason Reed took the chair a few seats down late enough that he had to slip in with a murmured apology. Naomi stood against the wall near the door with a few other nurses, no chairs left for that. "This will be brief," Alvarez said. "We have a notification from the regional network and from Federal Liaison." She picked up a thin stack of papers and tapped them into alignment. Within the next 72 hours, possibly sooner, Riverside Memorial will receive a high-risk transfer under federal escort, she said. The patient will arrive by ground, not air. You will refer to him as the Portland case, nothing more, and only in spaces that are secure and private. She let that hang for a second. In English, Jason said under his breath, not quite under his breath. Alvarez looked at him over the top of the paper. In English, she repeated, someone important is coming in critical condition. They chose us because of our trauma numbers and proximity. They also chose us because we have never had a major incident leaked to the press. Her gaze went around the room slowly. I intend to keep it that way, she said. The room shifted, chairs creaked, pens clicked. The air seemed to tighten like the hospital itself was inhaling. What kind of case? Hale asked. Blunt penetrating neurocardiac. They did not give me specifics, Alvarez said. What I have is this. She slid a document to the center of the table. The hospital logo sat at the top. Under it, a grid of numbers and abbreviations. High probability of surgical intervention on arrival, she said. Abdominal involvement is flagged. Potential hemodynamic instability. We are to be prepared for immediate OR access. She looked at Hale. That means you, she said, and your team. Hale nodded, jaw tightening a fraction. We will be ready, he said. We run high acuity abdominals every week. You know our stats. I know your stats, Alvarez said. The feds know those stats too. That is why they are sending him here instead of flying him to Seattle or Walter Reed. She paused. What they also know, she said, is that if anything goes wrong and anyone outside this building hears about it before they do, we will not see another case like this again. We will not see certain grants, certain partnerships, certain budget approvals. Her smile was thin and professional. So, she said, no talking to the press, no talking to friends, no social media posts about mysterious ambulances, no photos, no hints, no hallway gossip. Naomi made a small face at the mention of gossip, then tried to hide it. Alvarez's eyes flicked to her, then moved on. We clear, sir? Alvarez asked. There was a soft chorus of assent. Bed control will coordinate with the federal contact once we have a firm ETA, she said. Security will handle perimeter access. I want OR3 on hold every night shift starting tonight. That room is cleanest on record and closest to the dedicated elevator. Lena felt the smallest shift in her chest at the mention of OR3. It was a familiar room, angles and shadows she knew in a way she did not know any place she had ever rented. Alvarez gestured toward the nurses near the wall. Night shift will be the most critical, she said. If the transport pushes into off hours, it will be on you to make sure we look as competent as our statistics say we are. Naomi raised a hand halfway, then committed. Are we getting extra staff for nights? She asked. Or is this a do more with less situation again? A few tired laughs floated up, then died when Alvarez did not join them. Staffing has been approved for flex if acuity demands, Alvarez said, which means yes, Naomi, if you can justify it on paper, you get your extra hands. Until then, you work with what you have. Naomi opened her mouth, then closed it. Jason leaned forward, tapping his pen once. Who is running point in the OR staff? He asked. For communication, someone is going to have to coordinate anesthesia, blood bank lab security, and the surgical team if this guy rolls in half dead. Hale is lead surgeon, Alvarez said. He will be point. She looked at Jason. And you, she added, will be where he tells you to be. Jason nodded, a little sheepish, a little proud to be mentioned at all. And cross, Alvarez said. The room shifted again. It was small, a barely noticeable adjustment, but Lena felt it. Eyes slid toward her for the first time since the meeting started. Yes, Lena said. You float nights between post-op and OR, Alvarez said. You are familiar with both ends of the process. Lena nodded. When the Portland case arrives, you will be assigned to OR support, Alvarez said. Instrument room prep, whatever charge deems necessary. You make sure the room is ready before the patient is in the building. Understand? Yes, Lena said again. Alvarez held her gaze for one extra beat. You have a reputation for being where you need to be before anyone pages you, Alvarez said. Use that. Then she turned back to the rest of the room. Any clinical questions before we get into logistics, she asked. Hale spoke. What are we looking at in terms of blood products, he said. If this is abdominal unstable, we need a plan for massive transfusion protocol. I do not want to hear that the lab is surprised. The lab will be on standby from the moment they call wheels, Alvarez said. We will have units typed, crossed, and ready. You will have what you need, within reason. Hale seemed satisfied for now. Good, he said. The rest we can manage. When the briefing broke up, chairs scraped again and people filed out in groups. Clusters formed, voices dropping into quick, intense pockets of talk. Portland case, someone murmured. Sounds like a spook job. Probably some politician, another answered. They always say they are sending regular people, but it is never regular people. Could be a Fed, a third added. Or a contractor. Those guys find trouble like it is a hobby. Lena stood slowly gathering her empty cup and a pen she did not remember picking up. Naomi fell into step beside her as they moved toward the door. You ever notice how they say within reason like it is a comfort? Naomi said. Within reason we will not run out of blood. Within reason the patient will not die. Within reason is better than without reason, Lena said. Naomi snorted. You and your logic, she said. So, you ready to babysit OR3 for Mr. Portland? I will make sure it is ready, Lena said. They passed Jason near the elevators. He was talking animatedly to another resident, hands moving as he spoke. High-profile case, man, Hamid, he was saying. Alvarez might as well have said this is our audition. You know she's watching who handles what. He caught sight of Lena and nodded at her. Cross, he said. Looks like you get front row seats to the circus. Lena pressed the elevator button. It is not a circus, she said. It is a case. Jason chuckled. Same thing in this place, he said. Different ticket prices. The door slid open. Naomi stepped in. Lena followed. The elevator smelled like cold metal and faint perfume from someone who had ridden earlier. As the doors closed, Naomi leaned her head against the rear wall. You think it is a politician, she asked. Or some Fed? Or like someone in witness protection who got stabbed in a diner. Lena watched the numbers climb. It is a patient, she said, with an abdomen that needs repair. Again with the logic, Naomi said. You are no fun. The doors opened on the surgical floor. The operating corridor was quieter than usual. Day cases were wrapping up, night staff trickling in. A housekeeping cart stood outside OR3, a mop propped in the corner like a resting soldier. The smell of disinfectant hung thick. Lena spoke briefly with charge, confirmed the plan to keep OR3 on hold. She checked the whiteboard outside the room. In red marker, someone had written Portland case, then circled it until the white around the letters turned pink. Inside OR3, the room felt almost new. The floors shone. The table had fresh linens, crisp and tight. The lights overhead were off their reflective metal shells, catching only the faint glow from the doorway. The monitor sat blank, waiting. Lena crossed to the cabinets again and opened them, letting her hands go through the routine of checking supplies. Suction tubing neatly coiled. Suction canisters labeled and stacked. Extra gowns in their plastic sleeves. A pair of trauma shears with blades that still held a factory edge. She set another tray on the counter and opened it. The instruments gleamed softly under the ambient light. Her fingers brushed each piece, not lingering, not skipping. Scalpel handle, forceps, clamps, the short tenaculum in the corner exactly where she had put it before. Outside, a low rumble carried through the walls. Not thunder, not yet. Just the early complaint of a sky that would not stay clear. She closed the tray and stepped back, taking in the room as a whole. Table lights, monitors, machines. Doors that led to hallways, doors that led to supply. It was just a room, 4 walls, a floor, a ceiling. Her chest felt tight and loose at the same time. She reached for the switch and brought the lights up to full. The sudden brightness chased the shadows into the corners. Every edge turned sharp. The sound of the overhead ventilation system filled the silence. Lena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding, then turned toward the door. There was work to do before nightfall. By the time the storm finally arrived, the hospital had already been waiting for it all evening. Rain came first, a soft patter that turned quickly into a steady drumbeat on the roof. Wind followed, pushing at the glass in long breaths. From the surgical floor, the city outside looked distant and smudged, streetlights caught in sheets of water. In the corridor outside OR3, the overhead lights hummed. The whiteboard still carried the red circle around 2 words written earlier. Portland case. Naomi stood at the nurse's station watching the weather through a narrow window and hugging a clipboard to her chest. Storm nights are cursed, she said. I am telling you, people forget how to drive, they drink, they fight, they slip on wet floors. It is like the universe throws in a free shift of chaos. Lena logged into the computer beside her eyes, skimming the list of cases that had closed out and the blank slot reserved for OR3. Her fingers moved calmly over the keys. It is just water, Lena said. Naomi turned toward her. It is never just water, she said. Water is like the starter pistol. A voice crackled from the overhead speaker before Lena could answer. Trauma team to emergency, level 1 incoming, ETA 6 minutes. The words dropped into the corridor. Somewhere below, automatic doors swung open and someone started running. Naomi straightened, all complaints gone. There we go, she said. Starter pistol. The phone at the desk rang. Mariah picked it up, listened, then covered the receiver with her palm. Level 1 is abdominal stab wound, she said. Male 60s unstable. They are already activating OR. Victor wants OR3 now. Her gaze went to Lena. You are on it, she said. Naomi, you scrub with him. Jason is coming down with the trauma team. Lena logged out, tore a printout from the tray and tucked it into her pocket. "I will open the room," she said. The walk to OR3 was short. Her feet knew the path without her looking. The room sat waiting still bright from her earlier checks. The air smelled of disinfectant and cold metal. She moved faster now, but the motion was still precise. She checked suction turned on the machine and listened to the low hiss. She hung fresh suction canisters and snapped the tubing into place. She opened the instrument cabinets and pulled out the tray she had organized, setting it on the Mayo stand and opening the lid. Instruments gleamed under the lights. Her hand went unerringly to the short tenaculum and slid it into the corner position she preferred. She placed a second one nearby just outside the usual pattern. No one else would notice the addition. From her pocket she pulled a sealed packet smaller than the hospital standard dressings. The label was plain not in the usual hospital font. She slipped it into the pocket of her scrub top, felt the weight settle against her ribs, then smoothed the fabric over it. The intercom clicked again. "Trauma Bay report for OR3. Be advised patient will go straight from emergency to you. Prep team now." "On it," Lena answered, although the intercom carried no sound back. She moved to the anesthesia end of the table and checked the ventilator, the oxygen supply, the backup circuits. The anesthesiologist on call, a man named Gannon with permanent dark circles under his eyes, stepped in as she was finishing. "How bad?" he asked, rolling his shoulders as if loosening them for a fight. "Unstable level 1, Lena said. Abdominal stab, older male." Gannon nodded once. "All right," he said. "Let us set up for crash induction. I do not think this guy is coming up leisurely." On the lower floor, rain hammered against the ambulance bay canopy. The double doors slid open on a gust of cold air as the siren outside cut suddenly choking off mid-wail. 2 paramedics pushed a stretcher and wheels, rattling on the metal threshold. The man on the stretcher was wrapped in blankets, but his skin was the wrong color. A gray that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with blood volume. He groaned once as they turned the corner into the trauma room. Dr. Victor Hale was already there, mask around his neck, gloves snapped on gown, half-tied. Jason stood near the foot of the bed, pulling on his second glove with his teeth. "What do we have?" Hale asked as the stretcher locked into place beside the trauma bed. "Male, approximately 68, the taller paramedic said, voice slightly breathless. "Single stab to left upper quadrant, just below the ribs. Witnesses say 6-inch blade kitchen knife, found in a diner downtown." The paramedic gestured with his chin toward the far corner where 2 men in dark jackets and earpieces stood stiffly against the wall. Their shoes were too polished for a Tuesday night. "These guys say he's something federal," the paramedic added. "Would not say what." "Conscious?" Hale asked. "Was. In and out," the paramedic said. "BP on scene was 90/60, dropped to 70 in the rig. We got 1 large bore in his right arm, wide open fluids. No breath sounds issues, eh? Wickers? Yes. Belly is tight." As they spoke, nurses and techs moved around the stretcher, transferring the man to the hospital bed with practiced efficiency. The blanket shifted and the wound came into view. A square of blood-soaked gauze covered a spot just below the left costal margin. The gauze was saturated and the edges were already leaking. Hale leaned over. Hickel leaned over. "Sir," he said, speaking into the man's ear, "can you hear me?" The man's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, pale blue irises showed under heavy lids. "Frank," he whispered, voice thin. "Name's Frank." "All right, Frank," Hale said. "You are at Riverside Memorial. You have a wound in your abdomen. We are going to take care of you." Frank tried to nod, managed only a small jerk. His gaze slid over Hale's shoulder and landed briefly on one of the men in the corner. "Told you I was not done," he breathed. His eyes closed again. "Pressure is 60/40, a nurse called. Heart rate 130. Labs drawing, another said. Type and cross sent. Massive transfusion protocol activated. Prep the abdomen. Get the ultrasound," Hale said. "Jason, you are with me. Let us see how bad this pool is." They cut away the rest of Frank's shirt and doused his belly with cold gel. The ultrasound machine beeped as it came to life. Jason slid the probe over the distended abdomen, his jaw set. "Free fluid," he said. "Left upper quadrant, right 2. Morrison's pouch is black." "Positive fast," Hale confirmed. "He is bleeding into the belly. We do not sit on this." He raised his head. "Get him to the OR," he said, "now." One of the men in the corner stepped forward, careful to stay clear of the clinical chaos. "Doctor," he said. His voice had a flat, Midwestern sound, the words precise. "We have been told this man is high priority for our agency." Hale did not look at him. "He is high priority for me right now because he is bleeding out," he said. "You want him alive? Let us do our job." The man hesitated, then stepped back. Gurney rails lifted. Lines were checked and rechecked. Blood bags were hung from portable poles red against white plastic. The anesthesiologist from downstairs joined them at the door, already pulling on a cap. The hallway from the trauma bay to the OR elevator felt narrower than usual, with so many bodies around the rolling bed. The floor shone under the harsh lights, small puddles of rainwater tracking in from the ambulance bay. Lena met them as the elevator doors slid open on the surgical floor. The stretcher burst forward, pushed by strong arms and guided by gloved hands. Cables trailed IV lines, swung the portable monitor, bleated its panic in short bursts. She took in the scene in a glance. The waxy color of Frank's face, the bulge of his abdomen, the pace of the beeps. "OR3 is ready," she said. Hale walked alongside the bed, one hand resting near the wound, as if sheer proximity could hold the bleeding in. "How long have you had him?" Lena asked the paramedic on the far side as they moved. 14 minutes from scene to doors, he said. Another 6 in the bay. He was already crashing when we got there. They turned the last corner. OR3 waited with its doors propped open, light spilling into the hall like a stage. Inside, everything was in place. The table stood ready, anesthesia set up at the head. The instrument stands gleamed with neatly arranged steel. The screen sat dark, waiting for images. "On 3, Hale said. 1, 2, 3. They slid Frank from the gurney to the table. His body felt heavier than it looked, dead weight, even though his heart still beat. Gannon moved in at the head, checking the airway, positioning the mask. "Sir Frank," he said, "we are going to give you some medicine to help you sleep. You may feel a burn." Frank's eyelids fluttered again. His gaze drifted, not quite focusing, passing briefly over Lena as she adjusted the straps at his knees. For a second, his fingers twitched toward her hand. She wrapped the strap and buckled it, then stepped back. "Inducing cobganin fed, propofol bone, fentanyl, pushing paralytic." The anesthetic drug slid into the line. The monitor numbers jittered, then began to smooth. Naomi stood at the scrub sink, arms held out at her sides, water running from her elbows. She turned dried and stepped into the room with her hands held high, ready to gown. Lena helped her into the sterile gown and gloves, then moved to do the same for Hale and Jason. The ritual went quickly, almost automatically. Gown, glove, tie, turn, tie the back. The storm outside rattled against the building. In here, the temperature stayed fixed, the air filtered and dry. "Knife," Hale said by reflex, eyes on the draped abdomen. Lena stepped to the Mayo stand and placed the scalpel handle in his waiting palm. His fingers closed around it. For a second, there was a strange stillness. The room full of people and machines seemed to pull itself inward, focusing on the narrow strip of exposed skin between the sterile drapes. Hale drew in a breath. "Let us make this quick," he said. The blade touched skin and began to cut. The first cut opened the skin in a clean, straight line. Hale's hand did not tremble. The scalpel moved with practiced pressure, parting skin, then subcutaneous fat. A small halo of blood welled along the incision, bright against the pale belly. "Extend," he said. Malin said. Lena passed him a longer blade. He deepened the cut, following the natural curve of the abdomen. Naomi dabbed with a sponge, catching the first thin sheets of red. "Keep it clean," Hale said. "I want a good look at what we are dealing with." They worked down through layers. Subcutaneous tissue, fascia. The smell shifted as each layer opened from the sterile tang of prep solution to something warmer and iron thick. "Retractors," Hale ordered. The tech at the foot of the bed stepped forward, hands steady on the metal arms. The wound opened wider, held apart by cold steel. The overhead lights poured into the cavity, turning it into a small, bright world of its own. "Peritoneum," Jason said more to himself than to anyone else. "Yes," Hale said. "Let us see the damage." He nicked the peritoneal lining and lifted it. Air moved into the abdominal cavity, carrying the heat of the body up into the already warm room. A dark, glossy sheen met them. Blood had already collected under the thin membrane. When Hale opened it fully, the blood did not seep. It moved. It rose, a slow, heavy swell at first, then a sudden surge as the pressure found an exit. The cavity filled and overflowed, a deep red tide that rolled over the edges of the incision and poured toward the drapes. "Get suction in here," Hale snapped. Naomi leaned in with the suction tip, the machine already on. The tubing rattled as it pulled. The tip slurped and gurgled, pulling away enough blood to reveal loops of bowel and the faint shimmer of organs beneath. "That is a lot of free blood," Jason said, the unnecessary observation slipping out before he could stop it. "Thank you for that insight," Hale said. "Keep your eyes open and your mouth mostly closed." On the other side of the drape, Gannon monitored the anesthetic. The hiss of the ventilator kept time with his glance at the monitors. "BP is 80/50, he called. "I want to stay ahead of this. Start the next unit. Increase fluids." "Already hung," a nurse answered, adjusting the roller clamp on the line. "Hale that." He leaned over the cavity. "Let us find the source," he said. "Suction here. No here. Clear me." Lena stood at the instrument table, close enough to see far enough that she was not in the way. Her hands rested lightly on the metal-edged fingertips, feeling each vibration in the room. Every beep, every order, every small misstep traveled through the steel. Naomi's hand shook as she guided the suction. The tip bumped against tissue slip, then corrected. The machine slurped loudly. "Steady," Hale said, irritation sharpening his tone. "I cannot see if you paint everything with blood." "I am trying," Naomi said. The words were small and tight. Suction cleared just enough for Hale to slide a sponge stick in, sweeping gently along the posterior wall. "Retroperitoneal," he said. "He is bleeding behind the peritoneum. That is why his belly looked so tight." The sponge came back soaked, dripping. Jason shifted his weight hands, hovering over the field, unsure where to offer them. "Clamp," Hale said. "Long. No, the other one. There." Lena placed the requested clamp in his palm without looking down. She watched the way the blood sheeted along the curve of tissue. It did not fountain in a single bright arc the way a major arterial injury would. It seeped heavily from a deep, hidden point, more like a spring than a burst pipe. The numbers on the monitor crept down. 72, 61. Gannon raised his voice. "Pressure is dropping," he called. "He is not responding as expected. We are running product as fast as I can. Heart rate is 140. Naomi's grip tightened on the suction. Sweat ran under her cap at her hairline. Hale slid the long clamp into the cavity, feeling rather than seeing for a vessel to pinch. The field he had asked to clear filled again as soon as the suction tip moved aside. Blood pooled thick and dark, hiding everything. He clamped on something solid. There was a slight resistance, then a small shift. The bleeding did not slow. "Wrong bite?" He muttered more to himself than to anyone else. He released the clamp and tried again, blind. Naomi adjusted the suction, bumped a loop of bowel, flinched, pulled back. "Hold that steady," Hale snapped. "We are not vacuuming a living room." The suction slurped, then choked as a clot clogged the tip. The machine rattled. "Tip is blocked," Naomi said, panic edging her voice. "I need a new one." "Use irrigation," Jason said, grabbing a bulb syringe. "Let me flush, then use suction." He squirted clear saline into the cavity. The fluid hit the pooled blood and turned it a thinner red, then a froth. For a moment, the motion of the liquid made it look less like blood and more like something else, something a kitchen sink might spew. The monitor beeped faster. The tone of the alarm changed higher, more insistent. "BP is 60/40, Gannon said. "This is not sustainable." "Give him another unit," Hale said. "Get me more suction. I am not going to chase this leak all night." Lena watched the saline swirl. The pattern of the flow was wrong for a central vessel. The blood seemed to come from low and to the left, pushed out by pulses that did not match the main aortic rhythm. It spread along a plane behind visible structures, pooling where eyes could not follow. Her hands at the instrument table curled in slightly as if they wanted to reach into the field even from that distance. "Naomi, clamp," Hale said. She grabbed for it, and in her haste, her glove slipped. The clamp slid from her fingers, hit the edge of the tray, and bounced off. It clattered onto the floor, the sound too loud in the tense room. Everyone flinched. "Do not drop my instruments," Hale snapped. His voice was too loud now. "We do not have time for butterfingers." "I am sorry," Naomi said. Color rose on her neck above the edge of her gown. "Forget it. Give me another," he said. Lena handed him a fresh clamp without comment. Her pupils had narrowed slightly. Her breathing stayed even. "Doctor," Gannon said, voice tighter. "Pressure is 42. If you cannot get control, we are going to lose him right here." "I know that," Hale said. The words came out clipped. "You worry about your side of the drape. I will worry about mine." He plunged his hand in deeper fingers, pressing into spaces he could not see. The motion displaced more blood. It spilled over his glove and onto the drapes. It dripped off his elbow in a slow, steady rhythm. The smell thickened. Metal heat and something that did not have a name, but always came with a lot of blood. The room shrank around Lena. Not in size, but in focus. The edges blurred slightly. The fluorescent hum faded behind the sharper sounds of suction alarms and breath. Hale's shoulders rose and fell faster. His movements turned wider, less contained. "I cannot see the source," he said through clenched teeth. "Where is this coming from?" Naomi glanced at Lena again, eyes wide above her mask. Gannon's voice cut through. "Victor," he said, dropping the formality. "He is at 38 over something I do not even want to say out loud. We are at drips and prayers here." Hale froze. The long clamp in his hand hovered above the field. Blood continued to fill the cavity, climbing, pooling in every low place. The suction tube tugged weakly at the surface, too small to keep up. For a heartbeat, there was no movement. Only the sounds of the machines and the distant thrum of rain against the hospital walls. "I have lost the field," Hale said. The words were soft. They seemed to fall straight down into the open body on the table. Jason stared at him. "What?" he said, incredulous. Hale lifted his hands out of the cavity, fingers spread gore, slick and shining under the lights. His eyes were unfocused behind the clear shield. I cannot get control, he said. I cannot see, cannot clamp. I am making it worse. The suction still worked. It gurgled aimlessly against the flood. Naomi's breath hitched audibly. The tech at the retractors had begun to tremble. His forearms burned from holding the metal arms. His grip threatened to fail. Lena moved. She stepped away from the instrument table. The room seemed to part around her without anyone consciously deciding to make space. Her shoes touched the blood-flecked floor soles, squeaking quietly. On the second step, her scrub pocket brushed against the edge of the mayo stand. The small sealed packet she had tucked there slipped free, hit the drape, and slid to the floor at Naomi's feet. It landed face up. The label was plain white with black print. Compressed gauze, hemostatic tactical combat application. Naomi stared at it for a heartbeat, then jerked her gaze up to Lena, to the tag on Lena's chest, then back to the packet. Her mind tried to reconcile the hospital around her with the words on the label. Lena did not look down. She stopped opposite Hale at the table. From here the wound looked like a deep, dark hole in the middle of the man's body, filled with the worst possibility of what could live inside a person. She looked once at the monitor. 32. The beep had taken on a stretched-out quality, the pauses between each tone a little too long. She looked at the wound. The blood was not spraying. It was rising from a single region low on the left, with a pulse that echoed but did not match the aorta. It slid along a hidden plane, collecting behind structures that hid its origin. She heard her own voice in her head from another time, another room. Different patient, different wound, same pattern. Low, left third branch. Do not chase the big river. Find the small one. Lena, Hale said, what are you doing? He sounded almost shocked that she had moved. She met his eyes. This is a lateral retroperitoneal branch off the anterior inferior pancreatic artery, she said. Low and left of the diaphragm. It is not central. If you keep sweeping, you will tear something you cannot fix. Jason blinked. You cannot know that, he said. You cannot even see it. I have seen this bleed, Lena said. Her tone did not change. More than once. Her gaze went to Hale again. If you let me proceed, he lives, she said. If you do not, he does not. No one in the room breathed for a second. Hale stared at her. The clamp in his hand felt heavier than metal. You are a nurse, he said. You are not cleared to lead the field. A nurse is the one who has her hand on the bleed or she is watching someone die, Lena said. Right now I'm doing the second thing. Gannon spoke, eyes still on the monitor. Victor, he said. If she has an idea, this is the time. Naomi made a small sound that might have been agreement. Hale's jaw worked. He knew his own hands, knew what they could do, knew what they had just failed to do. The blood kept rising. He stepped back. For a moment, the gesture seemed almost ceremonial. He lifted his hands clear of the field, held them away from his body. Take it, he said. Lena nodded once. She turned her attention entirely to the wound. The room receded. More retraction here, she said, pointing with her eyes rather than her hands. Lift the colon gently. The tech adjusted his hold. The tissue shifted. The view did not improve much for anyone standing up. For Lena, it was enough. She did not reach for the long clamp Hale had been using. Her hand went instead to the short tenaculum she had placed earlier on the tray. The metal felt familiar and exact against her thumb and forefinger. She did not look at it. She looked at the blood. Naomi, suction low and constant, she said. Do not chase the surface. Let it pool, then follow the deepest point. Naomi found her balance again. She adjusted the angle, lowered the tip, steady this time. The suction drew down the top layer of fluid, just enough to reveal the contour beneath the subtle slope of tissue leading toward the origin. Lena placed her left hand on the edge of the incision, then slid it in. The warmth of the body closed around her wrist. The world narrowed to what she could feel. Her fingers moved gently, exploring without scraping. She followed planes of tissue, avoided the large pulsing wall of the aorta, noted it, and moved away. She traced the curvature of the diaphragm insertion, counted structures without naming them in her head. Her fingertips brushed a spot where the blood felt hotter. Not temperature exactly, but something like it. A stronger wash of warmth with each faint beat. There, she said quietly. She shifted her grip on the tenaculum, brought it in beside her exploring hand. She did not ask for suction here, did not ask for someone else to point. The tip of the instrument rested against her index finger. She let that finger lead. A shallow, controlled movement. She closed the clamp. The click was small, a tidy sound. Lost under the hum of machines, the hiss of suction, the beep of the monitor. She felt the vessel between the jaws of the tenaculum. It gave slightly, then held. For a half-breath, nothing changed. Then the flow slowed. Blood that had been rising in a steady, unstoppable climb hesitated. The pool stopped getting deeper. The suction still pulling began to catch up. The cavity cleared enough that the outlines of organs emerged, still smeared with red, but settling. On the monitor, the numbers ticked. 32, 36, 40. Gannon narrowed his eyes at the screen, then at his lines. BP is coming up, he said. 45/30, heart rate down to 130, keep it there, whatever you just did. Naomi let out a breath, a shaky rush of air. It is slowing, Jason said, staring into the cavity. How did you even find that? Lena did not answer. Her focus had not broken yet. She kept her hand in place, feeling for any new seep, any secondary leak that might appear now that the primary was clamped. Another unit is going in, Gannon said. We might actually get ahead of this. 5260. The color in Frank's face shifted by shades barely noticeable unless someone was looking only at him. The room noise changed. The sharp edge dulled. People remembered to breathe. Lena finally eased her hand back, leaving the tenaculum in place, its slender handle protruding from the clamp of tissue like a small flag. She stepped back half a pace to make room. You have control, she said to Hale. You can see now. He stared into the field, then at the clamp she had placed. The branch vessel it held was small deep and tucked low. It would have been almost impossible to visualize under pressure. You blind clamped a third-order branch, he said the words flat, almost disbelief, by feel. Lena removed her bloody glove and dropped it into the bin. Her fingers underneath were pale pruned from sweat. You should start closing what you can, she said. He has had enough open time. She reached for a fresh pair of gloves. Gannon looked across the drape. Whatever we call that, he said, call it again next time we are losing one. No one argued. The worst of the bleeding was under control. Not gone, not yet, but contained. Hale stood where Lena had been moments before, his hands back in the field. The tenaculum she had placed sat like a small keystone in a collapsing wall. Around it he could finally work. Suction there, he said, gently, let me see the edges. Naomi obeyed. Her hands had steadied. The suction cleared enough blood for sutures to follow. Jason passed them up with brisk efficiency, his earlier hesitation replaced by focused movement. Closing the retroperitoneal tear, Hale said, for the record, voice less ragged. Secondary bleeders controlled. Continue transfusion. On the other side of the drape, Gannon watched the monitor. Pressure is up to 70/40, he said. Heart rate 110, better than where we started. The numbers kept creeping upward in small, stubborn increments. Lena worked at the margins. She checked that blood warmers were still running, that the next unit was ready before Gannon needed to ask that the suction canister was swapped out before it overflowed. She moved with the same quiet she had brought into the room at the beginning, but the air around her felt different. People noticed where she was now. Hale tied off another suture and leaned back just enough to relieve his shoulders. All right, he said, let us start getting out of the belly. We are not giving him any more time open than we have to. Naomi sponged Jason-cut sutures. The tech eased the retractors down a notch at a time. The cavity that had looked like a bottomless well of blood began to resemble an abdomen again. Not untouched, not the same, but whole in a way it had not been since the knife entered. The tenaculum remained in place for now, a small insurance policy that no one wanted to disturb too early. How long has it been? Jason asked quietly, not lifting his head. 42 minutes from incision, Naomi answered. Feels like 4 hours. It is always like that when you are losing ground, Gannon said. Time stretches. A low sound rolled through the room. At first it felt like another distant thunderclap, the echo of the storm outside. It did not fade the way thunder did. It grew. Whump, whump, whump. The overhead lights vibrated almost imperceptibly with each beat of the sound. Dust in the vents shivered. Naomi glanced up. That is not thunder, she said. Gannon frowned, looking toward the small high window in the OR door. The frosted glass showed only light and shadow, but the rhythm of the noise was unmistakable to anyone who had ever heard it from closer than a television speaker. Rotor blades. Life flight, Jason said automatically. It came out like a question. The OR phone on the wall rang. The scrub tech could not move to answer. Lena was closest. She picked up the receiver, tucking it between her ear and shoulder. Or 3, she said. The charge nurse's voice came through, pitched a step higher than usual. Cross security just called, Mariah said. That helicopter is not life flight. It is Navy. They are landing on our roof, and the federal liaison is freaking out. The rotor beat grew louder, pressing down through concrete and steel as if it meant to burrow into the hospital itself. Understood, Lena said. We are on a lockdown for the surgical floor until they clear whatever this is, Mariah added. No one in or out of OR without security clearance. Just keep doing what you are doing. Lena hung up. Problem? Gannon asked. Not here, Lena said. Security is locking down the floor. Navy helicopter on the roof. Jason's eyebrows shot up above his mask. Navy, he said. For him. He flicked his gaze toward Frank's face, barely visible above the drapes. Eyes back in the hole, Dr. Reed, Hale said. We are closing fascia. We can gossip later. Whatever Hale felt about the news, he kept it off his hands. He placed the last deep suture, drew the wound edges together with slow, even tension. The bleeding did not restart. The tenaculum held. "How is he?" Hale asked. "BP is 85/50 now," Gannon said. "Heart rate 95. I am easing off the pressors a little." "Good," Hale said. "Let us give him a fighting chance to keep the blood we poured into him." They closed the fascia, then the subcutaneous layers, then the skin. Each layer brought the wound closer to looking like an injury that had been treated, instead of a disaster still in progress. When the final staple clicked into place, the room sighed as if it had been holding a collective breath. "Time of closure," Jason said, glancing at the wall clock. He gave the time aloud for the record. Naomi's shoulders dropped half an inch. The tech lowered the retractors fully and set them aside. The suction machine quieted to a low, idle hum. Gannon adjusted ventilator settings. "Bring the gas down," he said. "Let us see what he does on lighter anesthetic." A nurse began to wipe down the exposed skin, clearing away the last streaks of prep and blood. The rotor sound was louder now. It rattled through the fixtures. A small tremor passed across the surface of the saline in an open bowl as each beat thumped through the building. Then it started to fade, the pitch changing as the helicopter settled. Gannon looked at Lena. "They are parking right above us," he said. "I know," she said. She stripped off her gloves, feeling the tug as the latex left her skin. The air against her damp fingers was cool. The OR door banged once as someone tried to push in and met the resistance of the lock. A second later, the lock clicked and the door opened. A hospital security officer stepped in, hair damp from the storm radio, clipped to his shoulder. Behind him, 2 men and 1 woman in dark navy uniforms came into view. Their insignia gleamed softly under the OR lights, caps tucked under their arm shoes still marked with rooftop grit. "Everyone stop where you are," the security officer said. His tone was more urgent than authoritative. "We have federal military personnel on the floor. They need to confirm identity of the patient and the provider who intervened." Hale stiffened. "We are mid-case," he said. "You can see that?" The officer shifted, uncomfortable. "They said it cannot wait," he said. "Orders from higher than me." The tallest of the uniformed officers stepped forward. He was not bulky, but there was something solid about the way he held himself. His hair was cut short enough that the gray at his temples looked etched on. His face, with sun-lined eyes, steady and very awake. He took in the scene with one sweep. Patient on table, closed abdomen, anesthetic drip, blood bags, half-empty team in place. "Which one of you is Dr. Victor Hale?" he asked. "I am," Hale said, still standing at the field. The officer nodded once, then looked past him. His gaze moved to Jason, to Naomi, to Gannon, to the tech at the foot of the bed. Last it landed on Lena, standing beside the instrument table, hands bare, mask still in place. His expression changed by the smallest degree. "Ma'am," he said. He said it not to Alvarez, who was not in the room, not to Hale, who was technically in charge. He said it to Lena. "Do I know you?" Hale asked her. "Okay," frowning Cecilia. The officer did not take his eyes off Lena. "Elena Cross," he said. "Hello." "Okay." He said, "Nightingale 3. He did not phrase it as a question. The air in the room seemed to thicken. The only sound for a moment was the soft whoosh of the ventilator and the distant tick of rain on metal above. Naomi looked from the officer to Lena, then back again. "Nightingale," she repeated under her breath. "What is that?" Lena's face did not change. Her posture did. A straightening so slight it could have been imagined. Her shoulders came back, her chin lifted a fraction. "Commander," she said. The word came out with a different shape than her usual clipped replies. It carried recognition. Jason stared. "You know this guy," he said. The commander stepped closer to the instrument table. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a thin plastic card slightly larger than a driver's license with metallic edging. He set it on the metal surface of the instrument stand. The card made a small solid sound when it landed. "Special Operations Forces Medical Detachment. Nightingale 3, he said, as if reading from a list that was mostly redacted. "Captain Elena Cross, listed as killed in action, Ashfall Ridge." The name on the card was printed under a photograph that showed a younger version of Lena, in desert camouflage helmet under one arm, face and deep shadow eyes as clear as they were now. Naomi drew in a sharp breath. The scrub tech forgot for a moment to wipe down the last instrument. Hallie looked from the card to Lena. "Killed in action," he repeated. "You told them you were dead." "I did not tell them anything," Lena said. "They made a decision based on what they had." The commander's jaw flexed. "We spent 3 weeks combing that ridge with drones and boots," he said. "You disappeared. So did half the trail of bodies you left, patched enough to walk out. We thought you were under rubble." Lena's hands were still at her sides. Her fingers had curled slightly inward, nails pressing into her palms. "I walked out," she said, "then I kept walking." Hale wiped his hands on a towel he did not remember taking. His mind tried to catch up. You are telling me, he said slowly, that my recovery nurse is an active duty captain in some black box medic unit. Inactive, Lena said. I was mustered out on paper when I was listed KIA. The commander nodded once. On paper, Kate, he said. In reality, ma'am, your operational status was never fully closed. Your skills remain classified as critical. Gannon cleared his throat. Sorry to interrupt your classified argument, he said, but I still have a patient on my ventilator. The commander's gaze flicked to the table. Status he he asked. Alive, Hale said. For now, thank your captain here. The word tasted strange in his mouth. The commander looked back at Lena. We detected a unique instrument signature in your telemetry. Interesting, he said. Nightingale clamps transmit a very particular profile when they are in use. We assumed the kit was being used on a forward op. His gaze moved to the tactical gauze packet still on the floor by Naomi's feet. Then we saw that, he said, in a civilian hospital in Oregon. Naomi shifted as if guilty by proximity. She saved his life, Naomi said louder than she meant to. He was gone. She brought him back. I do not care if she did it with magic. The commander did not smile, but something in his expression eased. We know what she can do, he said. That is why we have been looking for her for a long time. He straightened. Captain Cross, he said, his voice softened by half a tone. On behalf of Naval Special Warfare Command and Joint Special Operations, I am ordered to inform you that you are being recalled to active status effective immediately. The word hung in the OR like a second incision. Recall, Jason echoed quietly. She works here, Naomi said. The protest slipped out before she could stop it. The commander heard it. He did not look away from Lena when he answered. She also works out there, he said. Lena's pulse thudded in her ears. The rotor noise above was fading now, replaced by the patter of rain and the steady beeping of a recovering heart. She looked at Frank's face slack and unaware, at the closed incision across his abdomen neat and harsh, at the tenaculum still in place inside, holding a vessel that would have killed him if no one had found it. I have a shift, she said. You have a service record that is still open, the commander replied. For a moment no one spoke. The ventilator sighed. The monitor kept its patient rhythm. Somewhere above, rain tapped on the roof where the helicopter had settled. Lena looked at the commander, then at Hale, then at Frank. Recall orders or not, Gannon said quietly, we are not moving anything until I have this guy stable enough to roll. The commander inclined his head. Understood, Dr. Kye, he said. We are not here to interfere with immediate care. He stepped back half a pace, giving the OR space without leaving it. The other two officers behind him adjusted their stance, hands clasped behind their backs, eyes scanning without staring. Hale stripped off his gown, then his outer gloves. His scrub top beneath was damp along the spine. He tossed the gown into the bin and pivoted toward Lena. You did not think to mention any of this, he asked, even once. Lena peeled off her mask. The elastic tugged at her ears and left faint marks on her skin. Her face looked the same as it always did, only paler. I came here to be a nurse, she said, not a recruitment poster. Naomi was still holding the tactical gauze packet, fingers tightened around the crinkled plastic. She loosened her grip and set it carefully on the instrument table as if it might break. The security officer shifted. Director Alvarez is on her way, he said. She wants a full debrief as soon as you are able. Gannon checked the monitors again. Send her in when she gets here, he said. We are not losing him now. If he stays where he is for the next 10 minutes, I will start to relax. Relief inched its way around the room. Nobody let it show much. They worked through the last pieces of the procedure. Hale removed the tenaculum Lena had placed tying off the vessel with care before letting it go. He irrigated the cavity one final time, watching for new seepage that did not appear. The wound stayed quiet. When they finally rolled Frank out toward recovery, he was still intubated, still pale, but his numbers had climbed into a zone that did not feel like a cliff edge. The moment the bed crossed the OR threshold, the room shifted. The focus that had been pinned to the narrow strip of skin widened to take in walls, lights, faces. Alvarez arrived as the nurses began to break down the room. She had changed into fresh scrubs, her white coat replaced by a disposable blue gown. Her hair was still perfect, but a crease at the corner of her mouth betrayed the day. Talk to me, she said. Hale gave her a quick overview voice, clipped eyes occasionally flicking to Lena, as if checking that she was still physically present. He came in crashing, said. Retroperitoneal bleed, unusual pattern. I lost visualization in the field. Cross-identified a third-order branch bleed by pattern, then by palpation, then clamped it blind. That is why he is alive. Alvarez's gaze settled on Lena. Is that accurate? She asked. That is what happened, Lena said. Alvarez looked at the commander. And you are, she said. Commander Cole Anders, United States Navy, he replied. I am liaison for several special operations medical units, one of which Captain Cross served in. Served, Lena said. Anders paused. Served and still serves on paper, Sigenete said. Which is the complicated part. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. I have a civilian nurse on my payroll whose file lists 2 previous employers in a local community college, she said. You are telling me that is incomplete. I'm telling you most of her real file is locked in a server. I need 3 passwords and a security clearance to see, Anders said. The scrub tech still holding a metal bowl looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Alvarez crossed her arms. How long have you known she was alive? She asked him. We suspected, Anders said. Telemetry flagged a Nightingale clamp signature during a previous urban trauma 2 months ago. The data was dirty. We could not confirm. Tonight we got a clean line. Command scrambled a bird. He glanced at Lena. We did not expect to find you in a community hospital or, he said, we thought you were on a contractor team or under another name. This is my name, Lena said. Alvarez absorbed that. In my hospital queue, she said slowly, I decide assignments, not any branch of the military. If there is a recall order, it comes across my desk in daylight, not in person after a surgery. We can do that, Anders said. Paper will follow. He looked at Lena. Captain, he said, and the word sat awkwardly beside her scrub top. We need you. There is a shortage of people who can do what you did today. There always is. Lena touched the edge of the metal table behind her, grounding herself against the cold. There is a shortage here too, she said. On every night shift, in every full waiting room. Naomi watched her eyes wide. Alvarez exhaled slowly. I'm not losing a nurse like this because someone in a windowless room suddenly remembered her name, she said. If you want her back, you make your case through official channels. Until then, she is on my schedule. Anders studied her, then gave a small, almost respectful nod. Understood, doctor, he said. We will talk again in the morning. He turned to Lena. This is not over, he said. But I will not drag you out of here in front of your colleagues. That is not how you treat people who walked out of Ashfall Ridge. He left, then taking his officers and the security escort with him. The door swung closed behind them, and the OR felt larger. Someone let out a breath that turned into a laugh, the sound thin and a little hysterical. Naomi pressed the heel of her hand briefly against her forehead. I thought the weirdest thing about tonight was going to be the storm, she said. They cleaned the room in silence. Sterile drapes came off the table and went into bags. Instruments went into bins to be counted and sent to central processing. The floor was mopped red streaks diluted to pink, then to cloudy water. Lena wiped down the instrument stands. Her reflection showed for a second in the stainless steel blurred around the edges. She did not look long. When the last of the immediate work was done, Alvarez touched her arm. Walk with me, she said. They left the OR together. The hallway outside was quieter now. Security officers still stood at the corners, radios crackling softly, but the edge of alarm had dulled. Alvarez led her to a small consultation room off the main surgical corridor. A table, 4 chairs, a computer screen dark in the corner. The hum of air conditioning sounded louder in the small space. Alvarez closed the door. Sit if you want, she said. Lena remained standing. How long have you worked here? Alvarez asked. 3 years, Lena said. In that time, Alvarez said, you have never called in sick, you have never refused a shift, you have picked up more than your share of overtime, and you have not stepped out of line once. She leaned against the table, hands on the edge. I wondered who you were, she admitted. I did not imagine this. Lena lifted one shoulder slightly. I came here to be ordinary, she said, to do a job that felt smaller. Alvarez tilted her head. Does tonight feel small to you? She asked. Lena thought of the way her hand had slid into the cavity, the way the vessel had pulsed hot against her fingertip, the click of the clamp. She thought of Frank's face, the gray loosening its hold. No, she said. Alvarez watched her a moment longer. Officially, Alvarez said, I will need your updated history, whatever you are allowed to provide. Unofficially, I would like you to stay. I intend to, Lena said. Alvarez nodded as if that settled at least one thing. Get some water, she said. Take 10 minutes, then check on recovery. They are going to be talking about you all night. Try not to listen. The whispering started before Lena reached the elevators. Staff from other floors came up with flimsy excuses. Someone from radiology delivered films in person when the pneumatic tube system would have worked fine. Housekeeping took longer than usual, pushing carts past the OR doors. Navy here for a patient? One tech whispered to another. And for a nurse. I heard she used some kind of secret army clamp, the other said. Like spy gear. She blind clamped an artery the size of a piece of yarn, a third voice added, awed. In the dark, with her eyes closed. The details warped already. Lena kept walking. In the recovery unit, the lights were lower. Machines beeped in softer patterns. Frank lay in one of the bays, monitored, ventilated, wrapped in blankets. His abdomen rose and fell under the dressing. His numbers held steady. Jason stood at the foot of the bed, hands on the rail chart in one hand. He looked up as Lena approached. "There you are," he said. His voice was different, stripped of its usual easy confidence. "I was helping turn over the room," Lena said. "Yeah," he said, "and I heard a bit about that." He looked back at Frank. "They are saying you saved him," he said. "Everyone is saying it." "They helped," Lena said. "Hail Naomi Gannon." Jason's jaw flexed. "Hale lost the field," he said. "You took it back." Lena did not answer. Jason set the chart down on the counter, the pen beside it. "I told you once you were too quiet for leadership," he said. "That you had to speak up if you wanted to matter in the OR." Lena remembered the cafeteria, the taste of lukewarm soup, the way he had gestured with his fork. "I remember," she said. Jason looked at his hands. When he froze, he said, "I did not know what to do. I stared at the blood and I could not think. You walked in like you had been there 100 times. His fingers wrapped around the bed rail. "I was wrong," he said, "about you, about what it looks like to lead." Lena studied his face. The edges of his exhaustion were sharper under the fluorescent light. "Focus on the patient," she said. "He is the reason we are here." Jason nodded. "Right," he said, "the patient." He looked at Frank again, then at the small ridge in the sheet where the dressing covered the closed wound. "I'm going to learn how to do what you did," he said. "Maybe not the nightingale part, but the part where you do not shake. Hands stop shaking when you teach them how to move," Lena said, "over and over, until they do it without asking your permission." Jason swallowed. "You will show us," he said. It was not quite a question. "If they ask me to," Lena said. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "I do not think if is the question anymore," he said. When she stepped out into the hall, the hospital felt different. Not louder, not quieter. The same machines hummed, the same wheels squeaked, the same overhead announcements chimed. The change sat under all of that, a slight tilt in the way people looked at her as she passed, in the way conversations paused, then resumed with a different tone. At the end of the night, long after the helicopter had gone and the rain had eased to a mist, Alvarez called a mandatory briefing for trauma and surgical staff. They gathered in a larger conference room this time. Morning light filtered through high windows, pale and thin after the storm. Coffee steamed in paper cups, untouched at first. Alvarez stood at the front with a screen behind her. On it, a simple title waited. Nightingale Protocol. Last night, she said, we learned a few things the hard way. She outlined the clinical facts as if presenting a case. Unstable abdominal stab wound. Retroperitoneal bleed. Loss of field. Intervention. She did not embellish, she did not need to. Going forward, she said, we are implementing a new training track for trauma and OR staff. It will focus on two things. She lifted a finger. First, she said, we listen to the quietest voice in the room, especially in crisis. If someone has a specific observation, they are heard regardless of rank. A second finger. Second, we move without waste. No extra steps, no unnecessary actions when someone is bleeding out. Efficiency is not a suggestion. It is a requirement. Eyes slid toward Lena where she sat near the wall. She kept her gaze on the table in front of her. Hale has volunteered to step down as chief of trauma while he completes this training, Alvarez continued. A murmur went through the room. Hale stood from his chair, shoulders squared. No one is forcing me, he said. Last night I hit the edge of what I knew how to do. Cross took us past it. I will learn from that, or I should not be in charge of anyone's chest or abdomen. He sat down again. The decision settled over the group like a weight that was somehow shared. After the meeting, people approached Lena in ones and twos. Good work in there, a surgeon said, not quite meeting her eyes. I did not know, a nurse admitted, trailing off when she could not find an ending to the sentence. Naomi walked beside Lena toward the supply closet. They are going to name something after you, Naomi said. I can feel it. A wing, a protocol, a closet. They already put my name on the schedule, Lena said. Naomi laughed, the sound brighter than it had been in days. In the supply room between shelves of gauze and gloves, Jason found her later. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. He said. She looked up from the box she was restocking. Dr. Reed, she said. He stepped inside the small space, making him seem larger. He swallowed once. I owe you more than an apology, he said, but I am starting there. You do not owe me anything, Lena said. I do, he said. I judged you on volume, on how many words you said in rounds, on how often you looked like you wanted to take the lead. He shook his head. You did not want it, he said. You just took it when everyone else dropped it. Lena slid another stack of gauze onto the shelf. People see what they know how to see, she said. I want to see better, he replied. For a moment, the only sound was the crinkle of plastic as she opened another package. Then watch the patient, she said. Start there. He nodded. Yes, ma'am, he said. She glanced at him. I am not your captain, she said. You are someone's, he answered. He left her there between the shelves, surrounded by quiet things that would be loud when they were needed. A week later, the storm felt like something the building had dreamed. The sky over Portland was clear and tired. Sunlight came in softer, now filtered through a thin film of cloud instead of rain. The hospital windows caught that light and muted it. Inside, everything looked slightly washed, like color left too long in hot water. On the recovery unit, monitors blinked in steady, unhurried rhythms. Machines that had screamed 7 nights ago now clicked and hummed like they were bored. Frank Delaney lay in Bay 4. The tube was gone from his throat. His lips were dry, cracked at the corners. A strip of white dressing covered his abdomen, taped down in neat lines. Gray stubble had grown along his jaw, more than a week's worth, softening the angles of his face. He slept more than he woke. When he woke, he did not say much. Nurses charted vital signs, adjusted drips, asked him questions he answered with nods and small shrugs. Federal suits rotated in and out of the visitor chair beside his bed. Some wore badges. Some presented clean faces and neutral expressions and nothing else. They sat, asked quiet questions into his drowsy space, then left again. On the 7th night, just before midnight, the federal chair was empty. Lena stood at the end of his bed with a chart in her hand. The paper was mostly electronic now, but she kept a small clipboard for notes she did not want to type while she was still thinking them. His heart rate sat in the 70s. Blood pressure within a bracket that did not make anyone tense. Oxygen was adequate on a low flow of nasal cannula. The graphs on the screen beside his head looked almost bored. He stirred as she checked the lines, fingers twitching under the blanket. She walked to the side of the bed and paused, watching his face. His eyes opened slowly, lids heavy. The pale blue that had flickered unfocused in the trauma bay now looked clearer, though tired. He blinked, adjusting to the light. Evening, Lena said. Her voice was quiet, the same tone she used with every patient in every bed at this hour. You are at Riverside Memorial, she added. You have had surgery. You have been asleep. He squinted, trying to bring her into focus. His gaze moved from her face to the ceiling, then back, landing on one thing at a time, as if the room were a puzzle he was putting together again. How long? He rasped. She reached for the cup on the tray, guided a straw toward his lips. Small sip, she said. He obeyed. The water hit his throat and his eyes shut briefly in appreciation. When he swallowed, the motion was careful, as if he was not entirely sure everything would go where it was supposed to. A week, she answered, since surgery. His brow furrowed. Feels like longer, he said. Your body has been busy, she said. Time moves differently when you are healing. He made a sound that might have been a short laugh. Sounds like something out of a pamphlet, he said. She took the empty cup back, set it on the tray, and reached for the edge of the blanket. May I see the dressing? She asked. Do what you need to do, nurse, he replied. She folded the blanket down to his hips. The dressing covered a long line down his abdomen. The edges were clean, no fresh seepage. She pressed gently around it, watching his face for reaction. His hand twitched near his side. This time it did not stop. His fingers drifted toward hers, searching lightly, as if he could not quite see where they were going. She shifted her grip, allowing his fingers to brush the back of her hand before she drew away. His touch stilled. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. They looked clearer now, sharper. Your hands, he said. He said. She stilled too. They are just hands, she said. I use them a lot. He shook his head slightly on the pillow. No, he said, not just hands. His gaze dropped to her fingers, to the short nails and the faint scars along the knuckles. He studied them with a focus that did not match his grogginess. You ever been somewhere that smelled like dust and diesel and hot metal all at once? He asked. Yes, she said. Of course you have, he said softly. He looked past her, then at something that was not in the room. Ashfall Ridge, he said. The words came slow, like he was testing them for cracks. You heard of it. She kept her expression neutral. I have heard of places, she said. They usually have names like that. He smiled without showing teeth. They told us not to use the name, he said. We did anyway. Easier to curse a name than a set of map coordinates. The ceiling reflected in his eyes. We were pinned on that slope for hours, he went on, longer than that. Time felt bent. Incoming from above, pieces of rock flying around like someone had shaken the whole hill. His right hand lifted a few inches of fingers curling as if he could still feel the weight of a rifle. I do not remember the blast that got me, he said. I remember hearing someone yell for a medic. Then I was looking at the sky and half my chest felt hot and wrong. My belly, too. He let his hand drop. They told me later it was an internal bleed, he said. Some artery in a place I could not pronounce. I was not supposed to live long enough to care. Lena watched his face. The monitor behind her shoulder beeped in a calm tempo. What do you remember? She asked. He looked at her again. I remember a voice telling me to shut up and breathe, he said. Calm, pissed off, but calm. He lifted his hand again, reached for her. And I remember these, he said. His fingers closed gently around her wrist. They were smaller than I expected, physically, he said. But strong. They went into my side like they had done it before. I felt pressure, not pain, then something like heat leaving. His thumb brushed over the ridge of an old fracture on her hand. You held onto an artery that was about to let go of me, he said, with your fingers. Then you clamped it. I did not know you could even reach that far in. He looked down at the dressing on his abdomen now. I woke up later in a tent, he said. They told me it was a miracle. I figured it was just good medicine. They said Nightingale 3 pulled half a platoon off that ridge alive. They said Nightingale's chief medic did not make it out. He looked at her again, really looked. They told us she died up there, he said. Crushed or blown or buried. They called her a ghost, the kind that stayed and watched over the hill. His grip on her wrist tightened half a fraction. I know ghosts do not change their hands, he said. These are the same. The fluorescent light above them flickered once, then steadied. It cast a pale glow over their joined hands. Lena did not pull away. A lot of medics have scars, he said. Bum. Oh, she said. A lot of medics do, Huey agreed. Not a lot of medics find the same artery in the same man twice. His words landed between them, heavier than the blanket. She let out a slow breath. You were the last one up, she said, at the ridge. He blinked. So you do remember, he said. I remember everyone, she said. But I remember the last ones a little clearer. His eyes grew moist. He did not look away. They said Nightingale 7 never left the hill, he said. They never told us her name, just the call sign. We made one up. We called her the angel in the dirt. He gave a choked laugh at his own choice of words. Not very original, he said. But when you are bleeding out, you do not need poetry. You need pressure. He looked at her hands again, then at her face. I went home, Shia, he said. Got old. Tried to forget the parts that did not let me sleep. Thought about that medic sometimes. Wondered if she was buried under the rocks we could not move. He swallowed. Turns out she was in Portland, he said, stocking gauze. Something in Lena's chest shifted. Not a crack, a small quiet realignment. You made it home, she said. Twice, he answered. They sat in silence for a while. The sounds of the unit went on around them in soft patterns. A cart rolled by. A nurse laughed quietly at something down the hall. Frank did not let go of her wrist. I do not know what they want you to do for them now, he said. Those people with badges and clean boots? Neither do I, she said. But I know what you did for us, he said. Back then and again here. You gave us more time than we had any right to ask for. His eyes shone now, but his voice stayed steady. I cannot pay you back for that, he said. I can only say thank you where you can hear it. He squeezed her wrist gently, then released it. Thank you, Captain, he said. The title felt too large in the small bay. It settled over her shoulders like a jacket she had folded and put away a long time ago. She set her free hand lightly on the rail of his bed. Your survival is enough, she said. It always was. He smiled, the expression breaking through the lines of age and pain. I will try to make it worth your trouble, he said. Do that, she replied. She checked his dressing one more time, more for the ritual of it than necessity. The edges were still clean. The line under the tape was straight. When she stepped back, the light caught the faint marks the dog tag had left on her palm earlier that week. They were almost gone now, just a memory pressed into skin. Frank watched her move toward the curtain. Do they know? He asked. She paused. Who you are, he added. Oh, yours, he said. Really? She looked at him over her shoulder. They know enough, she said. He nodded. That might be all you need, he said. The ones who were there know the rest. She did not answer. She drew the curtain halfway, leaving it open enough for the nurses to see the monitor from the hall. As she walked away, his voice followed her in a soft murmur, more to himself than to anyone else. I knew those hands, he said. The helicopter did not come back. Days went on without the thump of rotors overhead. The storm washed off the hospital roof and slid into gutters and storm drains. The city dried. Cars moved along the freeway like nothing unusual had landed on the building at all. Inside Riverside Memorial, the footprint of that night stayed. Security protocols lingered for a few days. Extra badges at entrances, extra questions at doors. Then the visible traces faded, tucked back into files and incident logs. The quieter changes did not fade. In trauma and on the surgical floor, voices shifted. Rounds sounded different. Residents started looking at nurses when cases were discussed, asking for their read on a situation instead of talking around them. In the OR, scrub techs spoke up when they saw a pattern and people listened. The words Nightingale Protocol ended up on more than one memo. Lena worked her shifts. She checked charts and changed dressings. She helped turn patients and coaxed them to drink water. She stocked supply carts, counted instruments, wiped down tables. She signed her name on small lines and initialed boxes. The motions of her days and nights looked like they had always looked. The way people moved around her had changed. In the cafeteria, someone else would sit at her table now without asking. Naomi claimed the chair opposite as if it had always belonged to her, dropping her tray with a clatter, talking about a broken coffee machine or a new resident who could not start an IV if his life depended on it. "You know they are all trying to copy your clamp thing," Naomi said once, stabbing a fork into a salad. "They are in the sim lab every day blindfolded, feeling around in fake bellies." "They should be in the anatomy lab too," Lena said. "Hands only find what the mind already knows is there." Naomi pointed a carrot stick at her. "That is the problem," she said. "You talk like that and they put your words on slides." In the staff lounge, a whiteboard had appeared with 2 lines written in neat marker. "Listen to the quietest voice. Move without waste." Someone had drawn a small bird in the corner, more doodle than emblem. The name next to the drawing read Nightingale. On a late afternoon that felt too bright for what it held, General Marcus Harlow came to the hospital. He arrived without a helicopter. No rotors shook the windows, no soldiers blocked the doors. He came in a dark sedan that parked in a regular space in the visitor lot. His uniform was crisp, the surface of his shoes reflecting the sky. Alvarez met him in her office first. They spoke behind a closed door for longer than anyone expected. Staff walked past and pretended not to glance. Security hovered near the elevator, not quite in the way. When the office door opened, Alvarez came out with a look that was not quite victory and not quite defeat. Harlow stepped beside her, his posture relaxed but exact. "Lena is in post-op," Alvarez said. They found her in the quietest hallway on the 4th floor, near a window that overlooked the parking lot. She was wiping down a blood pressure machine, moving the cuff through her hands with a methodical rhythm. "Lena," Alvarez said. She turned the machine still in her grip. "This is General Harlow," Alvarez said. "He has been very interested in meeting you." Harlow studied her with the kind of look that assessed and weighed at the same time. "Captain Cross, he's dead. Big business. "Lena," she answered, "in this building." A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough," he said. He held out a garment bag. The navy fabric inside showed through the plastic sharp angles and clear lines. A set of rank insignia gleamed from a pocket, catching the hallway light. "We would like you to consider returning to Special Operations as Chief Medical Advisor," he said. "You would oversee forward combat medicine, curriculum deployment doctrine. You would not be on the line unless you chose to be." He did not list the details. The increased pay, the clearance level, the respect in rooms where decisions were made about wars in places that did not have names on weather maps. He did not need to. The offer sat between them big enough on its own. Lena rested the blood pressure cuff on the cart. The Velcro made a soft ripping sound as it settled. "Who would I be advising?" she asked. "Medics who want to be you when they grow up," he said. "Young surgeons who think they know everything until the first time the field turns red and does not stop. Commanders who need to hear what blood really costs." He watched her face. "You are wasted on stocking gauze," he said gently. She looked past him through the window. The lot below was almost full. A paramedic was loading empty stretcher frames into the back of an ambulance. Naomi crossed between buildings with a stack of charts under one arm and a coffee in the other hand. 2 visitors stood under a tree arguing quietly about directions. "In Afghanistan," she said, "we measured success in how many walked away. Here we measure it in how many go home without a bill they cannot pay." Harlow followed her gaze. "Both fields matter," he said. "They do," she agreed. "I have played on one for a long time. I'm trying to learn the yard lines on this one." He let out a breath through his nose. "You have done more than that," he said. "If you stay here, you will keep changing the way they work, the way they think of their jobs. That is what my people tell me." He lifted the garment bag slightly. "If you come back with us, you change the way we train everyone who goes out there," he said. "Not just one hospital." The choice sat between them, simple in shape and complicated in weight. Lena thought of Frank's wrist in her hand, of Jason's face in the supply closet when he said he wanted to see better, of Naomi complaining about coffee while putting in lines with a precision she had not had 6 months before. She thought of the way the Nightingale protocol slide looked on the screen, stark and plain. "I can forgive myself for leaving one field," she said quietly. "I do not know if I can forgive myself for walking away from the other again." Harlow held her gaze. "What do you want?" he asked. She did not look away from the window. "I want a place where the noise does not drown out the work," she said. "Where I can hand a clamp to a kid whose hands are shaking and know that next year they will not shake anymore." She looked at him again. "I want to be ordinary," she said, "and still useful." He nodded once as if she had confirmed a theory. You have a strange definition of ordinary, he said. She allowed the smallest smile. It works for me, she said. He looked at the garment bag, then at the cart beside her, at the blood pressure machine she had been cleaning when he arrived. I cannot force you, he said. Even if I wanted to, those days are past. Command has no appetite for dragging heroes out of hospitals. He straightened the bag in his hand. If you ever change your mind, he said, the door will be open. He set the garment bag gently on the cart. Keep the uniform, he said, or burn it. That is your call. He stepped back and brought his right hand up in a salute. It was not casual, not perfunctory. It was the kind of salute given to someone already standing where he wished more people would stand. She did not return it. She inclined her head instead, a small, precise motion. Thank you for asking, she said. He lowered his hand. Take care of them, he said. Both kinds of them. The ones in beds and the ones who stand over beds. I am trying, she said. Mai said. He left without ceremony. The sedan pulled out of the lot and merged into the slow line of afternoon traffic. The garment bag stayed on the cart for a few hours. Naomi found it, gasped, unzipped it halfway. The brass on the shoulder caught the light and flashed. You could wear this, Naomi said later in the lounge, eyes wide. You could walk into any room in the Pentagon and people would sit up straight. Lena shook her head. I walk into enough rooms already, she said. People are starting to sit up straight there, too. A week after that, a plaque appeared on the wall near the entrance to the operating suite. Heavy bronze, simple lines, no logo. It sat at eye level beside the board where cases were listed for the day. Every surgeon, nurse, tech, and aide saw it when they checked their assignments. The inscription was brief, in honor of Captain Elena Cross. Nightingale 3. The nurse who chose the ground to protect the skies. Never assume silence is weakness. No one admitted to knowing who had written the words. Alvarez signed the work order. Facilities mounted it. Someone from finance grumbled about the cost of bronze in a private email and then approved the invoice. On the first morning the plaque was there, Lena walked past it on her way in, hair still damp from a hurried shower scrubs a shade more faded than new staff wore. She slowed. Sunlight from a narrow window struck the metal, bringing out warm tones in the bronze. The letters stood out in relief shadows, pooling in the grooves. Naomi joined her, coffee in hand. They did it, Naomi said. I told you they were going to name something after you. It is a plaque, Lena said. It is a lot of people saying thank you without trying to hand you flowers you would not know what to do with, Naomi said. Staff began to drift in for the shift. They glanced at the plaque at Lena, then back at the plaque. No one spoke. One by one, without any cue, they stopped near it and stood just for a second. Not in a line, not in formation. Just a small pause, a weight of attention. Jason arrived with a stack of charts under his arm. He saw the plaque read the inscription, then looked at Lena. He did not say anything. He touched his fingers lightly to the bottom edge of the bronze and nodded once. Lena watched all of it with a feeling she could not easily name. Shift starts in 5, Naomi said eventually. If we stand here any longer, they will put a second plaque up about people blocking the hallway. Lena turned away from the wall. In OR3, the lights were off, waiting. She walked in, flipped the switch. The room brightened surfaces reflecting clean light. She checked the cabinets, the suction, the instrument trays. Her hands moved over metal plastic glass, each piece settled where it should be. Outside the hospital moved through another day. Inside, Lena finished her checks, pulled on a fresh pair of gloves, and opened the first sterile pack of the morning. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.